Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is CJ the Populist New Yorker, and today we're going to be taking another look at the Virginia governor's race. More specifically, we're going to be taking a look at how the underdog in this race, GOP nominee Glenn Youngkin, can actually win the state of Virginia. We'll be looking at turnout factors, margin factors, etc. And I've done the math on this, and I'll be sharing that later in the video. How Glenn Youngkin can realistically pull an upset in the state of Virginia come November. Now, the Virginia governor's race, I believe, is around 70-something days away. And, that's a little bit over 2 months, and it's going to fly by. So the race is on November 2nd, and it's coming up very quickly. So we'll probably do a few more videos on it before it comes up, as it is basically the biggest contest of this year, which is why I've covered it in several other videos. But first, we're going to take a look at the polling aggregate before we really get into the nitty-gritty of the video today. As it stands on August 25th, 2021, Terry McAuliffe is up in the polling average by 4.3% over Glenn Youngkin, 44 to 40. If we look at some of the latest polls, we finally have some polls that aren't Republican internals. So as of August, we have the Virginia Commonwealth University poll, which has Terry and Glenn at 40 and 37% respectively. There are a lot of undecided and a lot of others. I don't know how reliable this poll really is, and it has a huge margin of error, so I would take that poll with an extreme grain of salt. Again, you have 15% of people voting for, I guess, an unnamed other candidate, and 9% undecided, which is a lot. The Roanoke College poll polled 558 likely voters. That's a bit of a small sample. It has Terry up by 8 points over Glenn Youngkin, 3% other, 13% undecided. Based on how that poll looks, it looks like the undecided would probably break for Terry McAuliffe and he would win in that situation. But the latest poll, which is actually a Democratic poll, Change Research, which I find very interesting, they tend to skew pretty Democratic. They have Terry McAuliffe at 47, Glenn Youngkin down by just 3 at 44%, with a margin of error, the smallest of all these polls. So if the polls really are continue in this really narrow trend, it certainly could be anyone's race, although, again, Terry McAuliffe is the favorite. He was the former incumbent governor, and Virginia is a blue state, but this all matters about turnout. And one thing I like about these polls is that they poll likely voters. Because when you poll registered voters, you will get a different result. If you poll just registered voters, Terry McAuliffe is going to be leading in the polls by a lot, even if the race is realistically closer than that. You've seen the same in California with the recall election. Most registered voters in Virginia skew Democratic. Higher turnout elections benefit Democrats in the state of Virginia, not Republicans. Likely voters, these are the people that are actually most likely to actually show up on an off year in 2021 and vote in the governor's race. Now, typically, the governor's races in Virginia have about 60 or so percent. At least the 2017 election had around 60, somewhere between 60 and 70% of the total turnout of the 2016 election. So the model I've made on Google Sheets here has a similar turnout dynamic, although I've adjusted it since this is a Glenn Youngkin win scenario video. This is not my actual prediction. This is how Glenn Youngkin can win the state of Virginia. So I've adjusted the turnout accordingly. Glenn Youngkin is not the only Republican on the ballot. Of course, we have other statewide races. We have the Attorney General and the Lieutenant Governor race, which we're not really going to be talking about specifically in this video, but both of those candidates are polling behind Youngkin. So it's likely that on election day, Youngkin probably will do better than all of them, although sometimes there are mostly Democrats and independents who sometimes skip those other races and just vote for the top of the ticket. So those races could end up being a little bit redder than the top of the ticket. But again, we're assuming that Glenn Youngkin pulls it off in this video. But we also have the House of Delegates up for election, which are 100 seats. Currently, the makeup is 55% Democratic and 45% Republican. I'll probably make a separate video on how Republicans can actually take over the House of Delegates. They really need 6 seats, and it is realistic. It's possible. Especially given the right turnout and the right energy on the Republican side, they easily could take back the House of Delegates. Probably not by a whole lot, maybe 2 or 3 seats, maybe picking up 9 at most. But we'll be taking a look at the House of Delegates map, which I think will be the same, considering I don't think it's changed since the last election, since the census. So we'll be taking a look at that, and we'll ultimately be playing that scenario out in a different video. But I did want to mention that the House of Delegates is up for election. The state Senate is not. So even if Glenn Youngkin does win, even if his lieutenant governor does win, the nominee Winsome Sears on the Republican side, the Senate is still going to be majority Democratic, so it doesn't really matter. There's still going to be a Democratic-controlled Senate, even if the House of Delegates flips to the Republicans. So we have to point out, of course, that Virginia is difficult territory for any Republican running. The state went Democratic by +10 in the 2020 election, and the margins in the suburbs, the most populous counties in Virginia, was, to put it lightly, atrocious for Donald Trump and Republicans. 35% in Prince William, 28% in Fairfax, 36% in Loudoun County. These are some of the most populous counties in all of Virginia. Overall, basically all of the major suburban counties essentially flipped to blue in the 2020 election. So, this is a tall order, no doubt, and the Democrats certainly have an advantage going in, but I want to take a look later in the video at some of the key counties and the margins that Youngkin is going to need there and about to actually be able to flip this state. We can look back at the 2017 governor's election. Ed Gillespie lost by almost 9 points to Ralph Northam, the then lieutenant governor. And again, the margins in the suburbs were better than they were in 2020, but not by a whole lot. Ed Gillespie outperformed Trump in the suburbs, but not nearly the degree he needed to. And he also didn't have the turnout out here in Western Virginia, which Glenn Youngkin will need if he's actually going to flip the governorship to Republicans. The margins in these suburban counties also don't cut it. Only winning, actually, I think this map isn't fully updated, but Ralph Northam actually won Chesterfield County, a long Republican stronghold. This was the first time since 1961, I believe, that Chesterfield County went blue rather, in a statewide race and not red. So off the bat, Ed Gillespie in some cases did worse than Donald Trump. He actually lost Chesterfield County. Trump won that. And we can look at the last time Virginia had a really close election, and that was in 2014 with Ed Gillespie, the same nominee we talked about in the governor's race, which was 3 years later. Ed Gillespie actually won Loudoun County in Northern Virginia. He lost Prince William by 3, and he lost Fairfax by 17. Put that in comparison. Just 3 years later, he lost Loudoun County by 20. He lost Prince William by 22, and he lost Fairfax by around 26 points or so. So overall, no, sorry, I messed that up. He lost it by over 30, around 35 points, 36 points. So a real big difference. He almost doubled his losses in the Northern Virginia area. And the reason I bring up Northern Virginia is because this is the biggest basket of voters in the entire state. Northern Virginia, I believe, comprises of about a third of the state, I think. Well, it depends on which counties you consider Northern Virginia. But a lot of Virginia lives in the D.C. suburbs, and these areas are the reason why Virginia has trended so far to the left since 2004. And really, it's been trending left ever since then, both statewide and federally. And these most populous counties, which are really on the eastern side of the state, western side, not nearly the population, although Glenn Youngkin will need to run up the margins in these rural counties to actually pull off an upset. And this would be a huge upset. A Republican has not won a statewide office in Virginia since 2009, the year after Barack Obama was elected, which it's hard to believe that was already 12 years ago. So it's been 12 years since Republicans have won a statewide office. The Democrats have put up a pretty formidable candidate, a former governor who is relatively popular. But the polling is a lot closer than he would like. And, the ads are getting nasty already, and we'll maybe do a separate video on the kind of ad wars going on in the state of Virginia right now and kind of objectively look at how effective these ads may or may not be to the Virginia electorate. But if Virginia was to flip red at any point, it would probably be now. You have Biden in the White House. You have, who by the way is, his approval rating is falling as we speak. And if his approval rating continues to be poor going into the Virginia election, that certainly will help Glenn Youngkin and the Republicans, because Democrats will likely be less motivated to vote. And you might have Republicans who didn't plan on voting before who may vote based on the fact that they're viewing the folks in the executive branch a lot more unfavorably than they did a few months ago. A few months ago, Biden was well into the positive, and now he's kind of teetering. Some polls have him underwater with Americans. Most polls have him just barely above at like 48, 49% approval. So I want to take a look again at the 2014 election. This was the closest election in Virginia in recent memory. And that was 7 years ago, so that feels like a lifetime ago, politically speaking. Now, this race was down to a point, just about a point. And these margins, 57% in Fairfax, 50% in Prince William, and 48% for the Democrats in Northern Virginia. These margins would not happen today. Democrats would never do this bad in Northern Virginia today, at least now. I mean, even if Glenn Youngkin wins by a couple of points, even by 3, 4, he's still not going to be pulling off these close of margins in Northern Virginia. And if he did, I would be completely shocked. Because I don't think that's going to happen. Northern Virginia has shifted a lot more to the left since even 2014. But something I want to point out is that Western Virginia is a lot bluer in comparison. A lot of these counties, there's much lower turnout, and they're a lot bluer than they are normally speaking. Ed Gillespie only got 69% in Bedford County. Donald Trump got 73% in Bedford County. You know, we can take a look at Patrick County, for example, 66%. Trump, 78%. So Donald Trump has improved massively in Western Virginia. Tazewell County, 72%. Trump, 83%. So Trump increasing his margins, Republicans increasing their margins in these areas substantially. And that certainly, if that were to have played out in this election, Ed Gillespie would have won his race. He would have been a senator for 6 years. Probably would have lost in 2020, but he would have been in the Senate for 6 years nonetheless, and it would have really worked out for him. Mark Warner also had the benefit of being a very popular incumbent, which is why he held on to his seat. But there are definitely areas, Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, where Republicans could have done a lot better. Ed Gillespie could have done a lot better. And certainly these counties here, a lot of rural Virginia is not nearly as red as we're used to seeing nowadays, particularly here in the western part of the state. A lot of these western counties, the turnout is lower in these rural counties, the Appalachian counties, and it's not nearly as red, so that we have that to also look at as well. If we look at the last time Terry McAuliffe was elected, we have a similar factor. Republicans were not doing nearly as well in Western Virginia. Certainly it was a Republican stronghold by then, Republicans winning basically every county and a lot of the independent cities here in Western Virginia. But a lot of Republicans in this race weren't big fans of Ken Cuccinelli. A lot of them voted for Robert Sarvis. And I've read plenty of articles that speculate if Robert Sarvis wasn't in this race, Ken Cuccinelli probably actually would have beaten Terry McAuliffe. It just so happens that there wasn't a lot of satisfaction with Cuccinelli among the base. Some believing he wasn't libertarian enough, some believing he was, not a too right-wing, and sometimes vice versa even. Some thought he wasn't conservative enough. So Ken Cuccinelli was a pretty poor nominee for the Republicans, and it still came down to around 2 points. And again, if Sarvis wasn't a factor, he very well could have won this race. And, again, the margins in Northern Virginia is a lot bluer, but Ken Cuccinelli is still only behind by around 2 points. These numbers are a little inaccurate. I think it's more like 45, 47-ish. But even with, a 22-point lead for McAuliffe in Fairfax, Since Western Virginia got redder, higher turnout, you see a race that's still relatively close. Now, something I want to look at is 10 counties that I believe are the key counties in the 2021 governor's election. Now, these counties are counties that I deem to be essential for the 2021 election, whether it comes to turnout and when it comes to margins as well. So naturally, in order for Glenn Youngkin to do well in this election in November, he's going to want to have more depressed turnout in Nova, the more populated suburbs of DC. And this will give him the advantage of getting slightly better margins in the Nova counties. We can conclude all these counties really in that bundle. But he's going to want higher turnout in Republican counties, obviously most of Western Virginia and Central Virginia. Now, in my Youngkin win scenario, which you can find in the description, I put a PDF or a link to a Google sheet that I made with all the counties and independent cities in Virginia, adjusted for the turnout, and put my results there, and you can take a look at them after this video is done. That took quite a while to make. It's a lot to kind of calculate all this out together. But you're going to need lower turnout in Northern Virginia and basically in all the bluer suburban counties, which will help Glenn Youngkin margin-wise. Of course, something that Glenn Youngkin will need, will go county by county, but by my estimation, Glenn Youngkin is going to need at least 44% in Loudoun County. We can take a look at Loudoun County in 2017. Ed Gillespie only got 39%. Youngkin's going to need about 44%, and perhaps those school board protests might give him the momentum he needs. But again, this isn't a prediction. This is more of what he needs to actually win the state of Virginia. Loudoun County, 36% of the vote went to Republicans in 2020. He's going to need +8 on that margin. And, I mean, he can do it. It's an off year. Turnout's going to be different. I don't expect Loudoun County to be this blue in 2021. I'd be shocked, quite frankly, if it was, which would really show that the GOP is basically an extinct party in the state of Virginia, or at least endangered for a while. In the county of Fairfax, Youngkin's going to need about 35% of the vote. Now, again, we'll just switch these over here. 28% Youngkin got in, Trump got rather, in the general election back in November. And of course, if we go back to 2017, which I'll just put up here, Ed Gillespie got 31%. So Youngkin's going to need to do about +4 on Gillespie's margin in Fairfax County. And it's very possible. He could very possibly do that. Prince William County, 41%. That's very doable, and in fact, he might even do better than that, even if he loses. Ed Gillespie got 38% in the county. Trump got about 35%. I think 41% is certainly doable. Now, Stafford County, Glenn's going to need 56% of the vote. Stafford County has shifted left substantially over the past, really since 2016, to be honest. In 2017, Stafford went to Ed Gillespie by about 52% of the vote, so he'd need to do +4 on Gillespie's margin. Very well could happen, very likely. Spotsylvania County, Youngkin needs 58% of the vote in order to be in a good position to win. Gillespie got nearly 56%. I think that'll be pretty easy, especially if turnout is in Youngkin's favor, which it's likely to be a lower turnout election, so Youngkin should have a slight advantage there. Of course, there are drawbacks. He's not an incumbent, but Biden is in the White House, and Biden's approval could have a significant factor in this race. Henrico County, one of the suburban counties of Richmond. Trump only got 34.6% of the vote in this county. Ed Gillespie got 37%. This might be a bit more difficult because Henrico doesn't tend to swing as much as the other counties, based on off-year or based in general elections. But Glenn Youngkin would need around 42% of the vote in Henrico County in order to be in a good position to win the state. That could be a bit difficult, but it's possible. Chesterfield County, Youngkin would need 56% of the vote. In my model, I have it at 56%. That could be a bit challenging. Chesterfield is one of those suburban counties that has trended heavily Democratic in recent years. Joe Biden getting 52% of the vote in Chesterfield to Donald Trump's 45.8%. And if we look back at 2017, the county was almost a tie, but Northam won the county by a few hundred votes. So that certainly might be a taller order, easier said than done in Chesterfield County. James City County, and the reason I have this as a key county is not necessarily population for this one. It's because it seems to be more of a bellwether. It seems to vote with the other suburban counties, so I have it on this list. It was one of the counties that Trump kind of barely held on to in 2016, won it by around 4 points. He ended up losing it by around 5 points in 2020, 51-46. This was a county that Ed Gillespie won by just 1.1%. So in order to be in a good position to win, Youngkin needs around 55% of the vote in James City County. That's mixed, but I think it could probably happen. Realistically, I think it's possible. Virginia Beach, and again, with a lot of these numbers in the suburban counties, I've tried to have been as conservative in my estimates as possible. Not conservative in the sense of politically, but more so as being, I guess, cautiously optimistic for Youngkin's perspective here. Virginia Beach, I have 53% of the vote for Youngkin. And he could do better than that. This was a county that went 51-46% in 2017. Ed Gillespie, very similar margin. But again, Jill Vogel, who was somebody down the ticket who did a lot better than Gillespie, got 51% of the vote here in a blue wave year in the state of Virginia. So I think 53% in Virginia Beach is very possible for Glenn Youngkin, and I think he could pull it off. And Chesapeake, he would need around 51 or 52%, although again, he could still lose Chesapeake by, these numbers are not necessarily in cement because, as we'll see, things can fluctuate a bit. And again, this is all contingent. I was, again, very conservative in my estimate. Rural turnout could be a lot higher than even I anticipate. And if that's the case, because rural turnout is always low in Virginia, both in the in off years especially. Some counties in 2017, only 50% of the vote that we saw in 2016 and 2017 actually showing up in some of these rural counties. If you can get like 65% in some of those counties, and I did up the turnout in rural counties because that's what Glenn Youngkin will need to win. But if you get even higher turnout than I anticipated, then he can lose some ground in these key counties and still end up winning. Now, we can take a look at my map, my Glenn Youngkin win scenario map. This has McAuliffe, of course, winning the key county of Loudoun by a likely margin. Again, he'd probably get 54% of the vote in Loudoun. Prince William, 57-41-ish. Fairfax, 64-35, thereabouts for Terry McAuliffe. And again, I won't go through all the counties here because I will have the spreadsheet in the link in the description. If you're curious, you can look at the margins. And I have adjusted for turnout. I put lower turnout in the bluer counties, counting on Glenn Youngkin to have higher turnout. So depressed turnout among Democrats, higher turnout for Republicans. And that's certainly something Glenn Youngkin is going to need if he's going to win. There are several flips in this hypothetical Glenn Youngkin scenario from 2020. Of course, we have the counties of Stafford flipping, James City County, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Prince Edward County, which is, even went blue in 2004. But that was a county that was surprisingly close in some of the down ballot races in 2017. So I think with just a little bit of a bump, you could see a flip there. The independent city of Hopewell, Lynchburg, which Glenn Youngkin would need to win by a significant margin, which Biden actually won, just barely eked out a victory in 2020. Youngkin's going to need a pretty good margin in Lynchburg City. Montgomery County would also be a flip, as well as Stanton, Virginia, and Winchester, the independent cities of Stanton and Winchester, from the 2020 election. And of course, again, a lot of the counties where Trump lost ground. York County swung 11 points left. Chesterfield, 9 points left. Stanton, 81. Harrisonburg, 8.1%. That would be a very dramatic shift. Harrisonburg, nearly 10 points. These are counties that swung dramatically in 2016, and these are areas where Glenn Youngkin's going to have to really, really improve if he's going to win this race in November. So again, I have the spreadsheet here, and you can check it out in the link in the description. But the final results for this simulation is Glenn Youngkin winning with 49.86% of the vote. 49.86% of the vote, and with 1,427,985 votes by this model, and Terry McAuliffe getting 49.5% of the vote, or 1,417,730. So that's about Glenn Youngkin plus 10,200 votes. In this scenario, and the rest of the vote would go to the Liberation Party candidate, Princess Blanding, who in this scenario, I don't think she's going to eat up a large chunk of the vote. Of course, there's going to be people that vote for her just because she's not Glenn Youngkin or Terry McAuliffe, but there is no libertarian option on the ballot this time around. So this model has her at getting roughly 0.64% of the vote. Realistically, she'll probably get around 1%, but that shouldn't really fiddle with these models too much. And, you know, voters don't tend to vote based on ideology, because most voters don't really know ideology. But typically you would see more left-wing voters voting for somebody from the Liberation Party. She has a very far-left platform, much to the left of Terry McAuliffe's platform, which certainly could be appealing to voters who are not fans of Terry McAuliffe but don't want to vote for Glenn Youngkin. But again, there are going to be people that vote for her that are all over the political spectrum that just don't like either of the two candidates. But that's my model. You can check it out again, link in the description if you're interested. This is going to be a nail-biter. Again, I was conservative with some of the estimates, so Glenn Youngkin, this isn't necessarily his ceiling. He could easily get over 50% in a very good situation. But I think this is the most realistic victory scenario we're going to see, and that's a pretty tight race. There's probably going to be recounts, and it's going to be a mess. But this is the way I see it as of right now in a Youngkin win scenario. This is not my election prediction. As we get closer to the election, I will make a final prediction, probably a day or two before the race. So expect to see that sometime in November. But again, you can check out the numbers, link in the description. Thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please leave a thumbs up or subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss any new videos that I post out of here. Thank you all for watching again, and I hope to see you in the next one.